Hello, this is Tim Rohr from the Utah Conservatory, and this is one of our Week 3 videos in our Music Theory for Composition course. Today we're going to be talking about contrasts in the arts, and in particular we're going to be talking about how we build tension and release tension in music. Most, if not all, forms of art have some sort of contrast within them. Music we'll talk about in a little bit the use of tension and the release of that tension. In visual arts we have different lights and different darknesses. We'll talk specifically about a style of painting called chiaroscuro, and we also have in the literary arts we have conflict and resolution. We're going to move away from music for just a second and talk about how the different art forms use contrast to create emotion. So first off, we're going to start with literature. In literature, the main form of contrast is a conflict and a resolution of that conflict. When you think about almost any story that I know of, there's some form of conflict, something that makes it hard for the protagonist of the story, and then some form of resolution at the very end of the book, so that you leave with some sense of things being completed in some way. In the visual arts, we have a technique of painting and a photography called chiaroscuro, literally meaning light dark, that uses light to create contrasts. Here is an extremely famous painting that uses this light dark idea. Down here at the bottom we have Mona Lisa's dress. It's very dark in color, and her hands that are extremely light in color. Because of those contrasts, we can see Mona Lisa's hands a little bit better. We also have up top here Mona Lisa's hair that's extremely dark, that is contrasted by her face that's very bright, and because of that we can see her eyes, her nose, and her mouth a little bit more clearly. Even within her face we can see some dark areas and some lighter areas. In these different art forms, the contrasts help create a feeling of emotion. In music, we have one of our forms of contrast is the use of tension and release. Some different ways we can do this is with dissonances and with consonances, with silence and with sound, with repetition and with newness, and with movement and with stillness. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list of the ways we can build tension and release tension in music, but I did want to show you just a few examples of some of these. So first off, let's talk about dissonance. Dissonance is a very sharp, biting sound that sounds almost gross. So here's a couple of examples of dissonances. So the first dissonance is called a half step. And you can hear how that really bites and really grates. The second is called a tritone. In contrast to dissonance, we have consonance. Consonance is a very pleasing, very open sound. A couple examples of consonance, we have perfect fifth, and we also have a major third. So we have these dissonant and consonant sounds, but how do we use these to create tension and then release it? Well, dissonance is so biting that it naturally creates some tension, and then what we can do is we can take a dissonance and move that to a consonance. In music we call that resolving a dissonance. You can really hear how building up the tension with a dissonant sound makes it more satisfying to hear the consonant sound right afterwards. For a final example, I wanted to play a little bit of a piano sonata by a composer that I think exemplifies this ability to build up tension and then release it. This composer is Beethoven, and this is his Piano Sonata number 1 in F minor, Opus 2 number 1. Throughout this whole clip, we heard so many different ways that Beethoven builds up tension and then releases it. From the very beginning of the clip, we had a lot of motion, and then right afterwards, there's this long chord that sort of stills us for a little bit, and then followed by immediately after that, quite a bit of silence. And then followed with this same idea, then a repetition from before, followed by new ideas, and then a little bit more motion. And Beethoven is a brilliant composer, and this is one of the ways that he makes his pieces more emotional, is by creating these contrasts, this buildup of tension and then release of it. As you write your music for the coursework in this class, and in any of the music that you write, I'd encourage you to find ways to build up the tension and then release it. It's one of the ways as musicians that we have to really draw out emotion in this art form that we have. In addition, I'd encourage you in your performing to find ways that the composer has done this and to really accentuate those so that somebody listening to you can really hear the emotion behind what the composer was trying to write. That's all the time we have for today for this video. I will see you in our next video.